Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. All right, today we are talking about 4 BS beliefs that a lot of guys hold unconsciously that thwart a man's purpose. Now, I could have used the word block or prevent a man's purpose. I chose to go with the word thwart. Why, you may ask? Good question. So I do this weird thing. I have this running list of evocative words that I keep on my iPhone. Every time I hear something that goes a step beyond words that we typically use, and I just keep a running list, and eventually my game is to work them into more and more subject lines or titles of our podcast because I don't know, that seems like a fun thing for me to do. Some of the words on my list: vanquish, besmirch, atrocity, flagrant, invalid, incensed, calamity, precocious, cavalier. I could go on all day long with this, but thwart was one of the words on the list, so I chose to use that instead of block or prevent. You're welcome. All right, so in The Way of the Superior Man by David Dada, he says, without a conscious life purpose, a man is totally lost, drifting, adapting to events rather than creating events. And without knowing his life purpose, a man lives a weakened, impotent existence, right? Without knowing his life purpose, a man lives a weakened, impotent existence. And that word impotent also probably belongs, I think it actually is on my list of evocative language. That cuts right to the heart of many men, because impotence, whether it's in our sexual lives or impotence in our energetic lives, in our spiritual lives, in our purpose, it's probably one of the worst forms of how I can feel showing up in my life. Like just a limp dick flopping through space. That is not who I aspire to be. So today, when we're going to be going over these 4 BS beliefs that many men hold that prevent you from living your purpose, it's in an effort to expose some of these unconscious operating belief systems that are keeping you stuck in a state of drift and preventing you from living your life purpose. Now, I'm giving you some access to some of the stuff that we went over in the Great Man Mastermind from this past weekend. You've heard me talk about it before. There's a group of 20 guys, and every quarter we do this virtual immersion online. Our intention is to get together in person when it's a responsible and prudent thing to do. We spend about 8 hours together this weekend on Friday and Saturday, split up over 2 days, talking about how to simplify our lives on our way to purpose, right? Simplifying your life is one of the pathways to purpose because we overcomplicate our lives in many ways. And I want to share with you a few of the ways that complication or drift in our lives can show up. So as we know from Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, that drifting is the number one enemy for you living a life of purpose. And drift wears many masks. So Tony Robbins once said that complexity is the enemy of execution. When we complicate our lives, we don't execute on the biggest things in our lives. And if you're listening to the show, you're someone who wants big things in your personal life, your financial life, your romantic life, in your legacy life. And if you're too complicated, it's the enemy of execution. In Essentialism, the book written by Greg McKeown, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less, he says that the undisciplined pursuit of more in your life leads to a certain failure. The undisciplined pursuit of more. And in our best efforts of running around trying to find purpose, we oftentimes say yes to way too much. We overcomplicate. We have an undisciplined pursuit of more, and it leads to failure. And then in The One Thing by Gary Keller, he says that extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus, right? Narrow you can make your focus, not going a mile wide and an inch deep, but an inch wide and a mile deep. That is the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results. By the way, if you want some of these books, these book lists that I've recommended, just go to doinnerwork.com/resources. And we've got these book lists, like 12 books every man must read, 18 books every business leader must read, all there. And these 3 books I just referenced, I think 3 or 4 books I just referenced are there for download. So back to the way of the superior man. David Daydock cautions that a man must not get lost in tasks and duties. Do mode is one of men's biggest strengths and weaknesses. It's great to be able to plow through obstructions and get the job done, but if you forget your larger purpose while pursuing the small and endless tasks of daily life, then you have reduced yourself to a machine of picayune. All right, so picayune also probably deserves to be on my list. I didn't even know what the hell it meant until I looked it up. Picayune basically means small, irrelevant, worthless, futile, right? So when you have forgotten your larger purpose while pursuing the small and endless tasks of daily life, then you have reduced yourself to a machine of picayune, pumping out irrelevant, small, lesser path things. Sure, you may be checking things off of your to-do list, but in the grand scheme of things, not getting you to that place of purpose. And a lot of us do this because we build and condition ourselves to be in constant do mode. Just like Dada says, to be in do mode all of the time because we're uncomfortable with pausing or settling or stillness. And when we are compulsively in do mode, then we have reduced ourselves to just becoming this machine of pumping out petty little things, pennies and nickels versus $1 million, $10 million, $1 billion ideas. And this causes us to struggle in areas of our lives unnecessarily, right? And I see this with really busy guys who are living way too overcomplicated lives, who are completing lots of things, but don't feel that sense of inner purpose. And so these BS beliefs, one of the ways that we can refer to these BS beliefs is this concept of Brules. Okay, so Brules are bullshit rules. And if you've ever read Vishen Lakhiani's book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, he introduces this concept of Brules and he breaks it down. Brules are unconsciously chosen. Brules are antiquated beliefs that govern parts of your life. Right? These bullshit rules are unconsciously chosen or antiquated beliefs that govern parts of your life. And these unconsciously chosen or antiquated beliefs that govern parts of your life are the very things that thwart a man living his purpose. So let me give you the 4 examples, and these are certainly not exhaustive, but these are 4 BS beliefs or Brules that prevent and thwart a man from living his purpose. Number 1, I can only feel good, joy, meaning, or valuable when I'm winning or when I'm successful. Right? I can only feel good. I can only feel a sense of satisfaction. I can only feel joy. I can only feel meaning when I'm winning or successful. We see this all the time with guys who set big goals. You know, one of my brother from childhood, Mike DeCourcy, who started up a technology company that he's been the CEO of for 4 years. It's a profitable startup company, right? What they do is it's called Counterfind, and they find counterfeit merchandise online. People who pirate things like the NFL or WWE or musicians who don't have the licensing, like they've developed an algorithm online that can prevent and capture people who are pirating those products online. And he's built this to a profitable company. And of course, like one of the things that you want to do when you're a tech company that's a startup is you want to go out and get venture capital funding. And that's like one of his big missions as a CEO of the business. And in his effort to like focus on getting the business ready for that, he's achieved all of these successes over the 4 years to build a stable company with a product that works, an algorithm that works, that is profitable. And many of these tech companies are not profitable. And he told me that he missed out on feeling powerful, on feeling joyful, on celebrating those successes and the wins and what he and the rest of the team have been able to build over these past 4 years, because he's constantly looking for that end game of being able to get that venture capital funding. It's not to say that you stop and just that you're satisfied and that you no longer look for that end game, but to not enjoy the process, to constantly be focused on that finish line, believing that when you climb to the top of that mountain, that all of the things that you're seeking, self-worth, satisfaction, inner peace, filling whatever hole may be inside of you, like that doesn't work. We've heard time and time again from people like Jim Carrey who say, I wish everyone could be successful and rich and famous so they can realize it's not that it's all cracked up to be. From Phil Jackson, who won 11 titles as a head coach of the Lakers and the Bulls and 2 more as a player for the Knicks, who said that when I won my first NBA championship, it was such a transient experience that I realized there had to be something more. And I realized that purpose came in being fully engaged in every day and every moment of my life, not in some achievement that's outside of myself. And so I see so many guys churning through life, accomplishing all sorts of things that they don't even enjoy because they're constantly looking for that finish line and they're missing their lives and their purpose in the process. So that's one BS rule that thwarts you from living and feeling a sense of purpose on a daily basis. BS rule number 2, struggle, pain, and grinding are the avenues for getting me what I want. So many guys buy into this concept of like, no pain, no gain. Of course, fellas, I know that like pain is a part of life. Sacrifice is a part of life. But the narrative is that like, if you're not experiencing struggle or pain or grind, then you're somehow off the path. And I have found the complete opposite. When I have started to enjoy my life, when I built more of my life around the things that give me my greatest energy, when I am lit up by my life, when I wake up inspired, when I have a spark in my eye, when my tank is full, when I am enjoying running 8 hours of mastermind over the course of a weekend, and then having one of the guys from the mastermind come over yesterday where I held space for him through like a meditative and healing session that he wanted to work on some fears in his life. When I'm energized by that stuff, where my tank is full, that's when I'm living my purpose. Not when I'm sleepless, baggy eyes, taking on clients that I don't want to work with or that are misaligned with me, saying yes to projects that I feel are the things that are going to make me grow my audience, but I don't really like what I'm doing or it's out of alignment. Struggle, pain, and grind are bullshit. Bullshit. If it's the predominant way that we're building our lives. Of course, struggle, pain, and grind are a percentage of any meaningful life expedition. But if it's the predominant one, you got it all backwards. I don't know many guys who live 95% or 75% in struggle, pain, or grind who feel connected to their purpose. Living your purpose feels fucking good. And I want you to hear that. Living purpose feels fucking good. And when I feel good, I know I'm aligned. I know I'm living my great man. And when I'm not feeling that way, it's my quickest indication that I'm doing something wrong. Rule number 3, or BS belief that thwarts you from living your purpose. I'll be happy when ... Fill in that blank. I'll be happy when I get the venture capital funding. I'll be happy when I hit a certain weight. I'll be happy when my business makes 7 figures. I'll be happy when I find the love of my life. I'll be happy when I have that second home. Whatever it is that you fill in that blank with, I will be happy when means that there's this belief that happiness exists outside of you in some future state. And as we've talked about many times on this show, purpose, greatest energy, sense of meaning and fulfillment only happens and exists in the now. Jesse Elder, who, if you haven't listened to his podcast, I think it's just called Jesse. He's a philosopher. He's an entrepreneur. He's a good friend of mine. I think I've known him for about a decade now, and I've seen his ascent to becoming like one of the biggest thinkers in the world and he's almost like an anarchist in the way that he thinks. He was the one who really hammered home this lesson that, purpose is oftentimes misconstrued as this thing that's outside of us or some future state or as a result of achieving some massive accomplishment. And therefore, when we live with that thought or that belief system, then we constantly kind of kick the can down the road. We never feel that sense of meaning and fulfillment in the moment because we're training ourselves right now, every moment, to believe that purpose is somewhere outside of us. And then when we get that achievement, we climb to the top of the mountain and realize there's nothing up there. Then we go and, then we lament that experience, but then we go back to our training and say, oh, it must be on top of another mountain, or it must be some other dragon I need to slay. And like Phil Jackson teaches, it's not that I'll be happy when I win that 12th title. It's I'll be happy when I feel a sense of engagement in my daily life. And the fourth final rule here is when I'm not doing, when I'm not achieving, I'm being lazy, right? When I'm not doing, when I'm not in do mode, when I'm not achieving, when I'm not accomplishing, when I'm not taking things off my to-do list, I'm being lazy. So many guys fear being lazy. So many guys have this, it's like almost another rule, this belief unconsciously that inherently they are lazy. And therefore, that fear drives them into action, into motion. And like David Deida said, like one of the greatest gifts that men have is being in this do mode, right? Accomplishing, achieving, knocking things off our to-do list. But it's also one of our greatest weaknesses when it's driven by fear, when we are drifting, reducing ourselves to a machine of Picayune, as he would say, just doing and accomplishing small and irrelevant tasks. I mean, the simplest version of that is like this game of like inbox zero. If inbox zero is one of your priorities in life, you will never find purpose. If that is one of the things that you prioritize is getting your inbox down to zero, how does that have anything to do with you living a life of meaning and fulfillment or purpose? And I'm not saying that to judge you. I'm also trying to yell at myself from like 10 years ago where I thought that was important. I needed to go to bed at night knowing I had 0 emails in my inbox. And that was the biggest game I was playing. Are you kidding me? It was only when I started to cultivate a sense of stillness in my life. This is one of the things that Deida teaches in The Way of the Superior Man. If a man wants to find his purpose, he must cultivate periods of stillness in his life, whether it's just like 5 to 10 minutes a day in a meditative practice. John Wineland talked about this in The Art of Masculine Leadership. I think it's our 4th most downloaded episode. Go check that out, where he talks about like every man for half an hour a day needs to have a stillness practice where he stops doing and he just sits with himself. Because in that period of stillness, you can see much more deeply the stuff that's small, the stuff that actually doesn't require attention, and some of the stuff that really starts to bubble up will give you perspective on the things that are most important in your life and can make some big life-changing decisions in that regard. I have also learned that stillness needs to come in much larger chunks, which is why I've done things like a 10-day silent meditation, a Vipassana retreat. Sometimes I go on my vacations solo, for 7 days. I'm a single guy. I know it may be difficult or different for men who have families, but I would say for men who have families, it's even more important for you because oftentimes you don't know where you stop and start and where the rest of like your family begins. Like you're all kind of just so immersed in each other. For a guy like you need to be able to create stillness, even in small pockets, and then maybe work your way up to, honey, like, is there a way that we can create a day where like I just go off and do my own thing? And then like you can give your partner one of those days back in return at a future state. But when we are running around in our lives constantly doing over and over and over again because we fear being lazy, then we have basically condemned ourselves to living a lifetime of running around doing nothing but small stuff. And that's not a guy who lives the great man within him. That's not a guy living his purpose. So what we talk about in the mastermind is that if you want to simplify your life, and if you want to live a life of purpose and live your fullest potential, you need to become aware of these rules that are thwarting your ability to live purpose. And the opposite of a Brule is a principle. The opposite of a Brule is a principle. A principle is something that's consciously chosen, that gives you direction and meaning in your life. I write about the power of principles in my book, On Purpose Leadership, where your purpose is supported by principles that you define. Principles are like anti-drift devices. Principles are like the gutters, the guardrails in the gutters of a bowling alley, so that like when your ball starts careening off into the gutter, your principles help to bounce back and get you on track. Principles are consciously chosen. Some of the principles you've heard me and Brian talk about ad nauseum on the show are, I lean out over my edge constantly in everything I do. I lean out over my edge constantly in everything I do. That's borrowed from David Data's The Way of the Superior Man and modified from it, which means when I'm looking at leveling up my life and I feel a sense of fear, I can either shrink back from that, or I can look at my principle and say, no, I lean out over my edge in everything, constantly, in everything that I do, because that represents growth. That means I'm staying on purpose. That means I'm living the best version of myself. And it also means I'm not thrusting myself too far over the edge, unable to metabolize my experience, right? Like taking on too much or thinking I'm a hero bigger than I actually am, and then collapsing under the weight of the responsibilities that I've now assumed, right? Madeline Moon taught us that one of the things where men lose credibility with women in their lives is lack of integrity in what we can and cannot handle. When we take on too much in our lives, when we come home to the partners and we have our worst energy or we're exhausted, and then we give them the table scraps. That's not a man who leans out over his edge. That's a man who's jumped over his edge and landed in the abyss because he's not able to calibrate his life. That principle helps me to determine in the moment where I have to make a decision exactly which way to go. Another one of the principles is a great man creates environments where he and those he cares about can thrive. A great man creates environments where he and those he cares about can thrive. So again, anytime I have to make a decision about the future of my business, am I creating an environment where Callie Simon, my COO, and the future employees of my company will be able to thrive? With the mastermind, when I want to make a decision on, say, someone says something or does something that maybe is not in alignment with the group values and principles. Well, is this allowing this group to thrive or not? I can make that decision because I have this principle that guides me in that moment. And the third principle, which I put on the cover of my book, I master the art of leading myself first, so then I can inspire and impact others next. Too many leaders, too many men are running around trying to tell everyone else what to do, leading other people when he hasn't fortified his inner foundation, when he doesn't know what he stands for, when he is allowing Brules to govern his life, when he hasn't mastered the art of leading himself and not showing up 100% the best version of himself. Who is he to tell others what to do when he clearly isn't aware of what he needs to do to put himself in the best position? So allowing myself to recognize this guiding principle of, hey, if I'm anxious, if I'm waking up in a given day and I'm resentful, if my mind is cloudy, if I feel like my old behaviors and patterns are popping up that are distracting me, I'm not in the best position to lead other people, right? So like I'm very quickly doing the things that I need to do to get myself back in order before I make big decisions for the future of my business or the mastermind. I'm certainly not podcasting and talking to you from a place where when I'm suboptimal, because you'll feel that from me. So I mastered the art of leading myself so I can come on this mic and give you some shit that will shake up your day and maybe the rest of your life if you hear it. So these principles are consciously chosen. They simplify your life because you make one decision, like outlining this principle, and it eliminates thousands of decisions, potential inflection points or moments in the future. I think either Ray Dalio in the book Principles, or maybe it's James Clear in Atomic Habits, talks about if you make one powerful decision in the moment, It eliminates thousands of decisions or tens of thousands of decisions in future moments because this clear decision right now it guides you in the future. Fathers start to write their own principles in our mastermind around how they want to parent. Leaders write principles about how they want to lead. Men in relationship write principles about how they want to show up in their relationship. So when there's a decision to be made or when there's an argument, you can rely upon the thing that you wrote down when you were most resourceful and clear-minded to help you when you're not feeling so resourceful and when you're cloudy. So these are the ways when you start to write down and connect to principles that allow you to direct your energy and to stay on purpose in your life. That's how you overcome these BS beliefs that thwart you from living on purpose. So again, the 4 BS beliefs that thwart a man from living purpose is, number 1, I can only feel good, joy, meaning, or valuable when I'm winning, successful, or achieving some goal. BS rule number 2, struggle, pain, and grind are the only avenues for me getting what I want. Number 3, I'll be happy when ... And then BS rule number 4, when I'm not doing, achieving, checking a box, then I'm being lazy. These are BS beliefs that were operating in your unconscious that are now in your conscious awareness. It's time to kill those necessary endings and replace them with the principles that will govern your life. I gave you 3, which are I lean out over my edge constantly in everything I do. A great man creates environments where he and those he cares about can thrive. I master the art of leading myself so I can inspire and impact others. These are the 3 principles that the mastermind lives by. But you can also design your own, right? Like talking about how I find joy in the journey every day. Purpose and meaning happen moment to moment, not in the future. There's an infinite number of ways that you can author these yourself. So when this episode is over, shut down the outside world, take 5 minutes and write down a principle or 3 principles that you will keep front and center that will help to govern your life, to keep you from drifting into the gutter, and that will allow you to stay on purpose. Hey, one of the best ways to stay connected with me on a regular basis is to follow me on Instagram @DominicQ. It's the social platform that I enjoy the most, I'm most active on, and I'm going to be ramping up my communications on there probably a couple times a day. And you'll get a chance to kind of see into my world and my life and how I live on a daily basis, the workouts that I do, the food that I eat, some of the people who I follow that give me inspiration, both men and women that I admire and that I look up to. So yeah, reach out, connect with me on @DominicQ.com. It's a great way also to send me direct messages where we can start to build a relationship. And then most of the things that are breaking, like breaking news in my life, I break there first. So if we start to do a community group or programs or anything that may be of interest, I usually launch it there first. And I think that's all I got to say about that. So head over to Instagram @DominicQ, and I'll see you there.